All right, let's talk about something that happens to a lot of successful accounting firms. It's this weird paradox, right? The more you grow, the crazier things get on the inside. So today, we're going to dig into why that is, and more importantly, how you can build a solid foundation that turns all that chaotic growth into something stable, something you can really count on.
So does this hit close to home? 1 minute, you feel like you've got it all under control, and the next, bam, your team is just drowning in work. Suddenly, it feels like busy season never really ends. If you're sitting there nodding your head, you are not alone. This is a classic growing pain.
And while this quote just nails it, doesn't it? From the outside looking in, everything's amazing. Clients are thrilled, the money's rolling in, but you know what's really going on. You know your best people are on the verge of burnout, and the systems you've been using, they feel like they're held together with tape, ready to snap.
And this is so important to understand. This isn't a people problem. Your team is probably working harder than ever. It's not a talent problem, it's a structure problem. The foundation of your back office, the very thing that got you here, just wasn't designed to handle this kind of growth. And now, you're starting to see those cracks appear.
Okay, so think of growth as the ultimate stress test for your firm. You know, when you were smaller, you could kind of patch things up. A few late nights here, a manual workaround there, no big deal. But as you get bigger, those tiny little cracks don't just get wider, they become massive fractures that threaten the whole operation.
And this is where it all comes to a head. All these pressures start to stack up. You've got more complex clients, way more transactions, deadlines that just keep getting tighter, and of course, more compliance rules to follow. It all starts to squeeze your firm's foundation. And it's not just about having more work, it's that the work itself is getting way more complex. Without the right systems in place, that growth just creates pressure, not progress.
So, where do things usually break first? From what we see, there are two main areas that turn into huge bottlenecks and cause some serious headaches for a growing firm. Let's take a look. First up, the reconciliation bottleneck. I mean, this is detailed, high-stakes stuff. There's no room for error. But when your team is totally swamped, what happens? It gets rushed. And rushed work leads to mistakes that an auditor is definitely going to find. It just becomes this massive choke point that puts an insane amount of pressure on everyone.
And then there's bottleneck number 2, the documentation scramble. Oh man, we've all lived this nightmare, right? You're trying to get work done, but you're missing info. Everything slows to a crawl. Reviews take forever. Stress levels are through the roof. And your super smart team ends up spending their time chasing down paperwork instead of actually providing valuable insights. It is a massive time suck.
Okay, so enough about the problems. What's the solution here? Well, it's all about building a stronger, more robust foundation. And for a lot of firms, the answer is strategic outsourcing. And I'm not just talking about it as a way to save a few bucks. I'm talking about using it to build a back office that can actually scale with you. And here we've got the 4 key pillars of that foundation. Look at this. You can outsource inventory reconciliation, which gives you a reliable audit-ready workflow. You can get help with tax documentation, which tackles the root cause of all that tax season insanity. Offshore staffing, that takes the guesswork out of your capacity. And offshore tax planning lets you offer more advisory services without totally overwhelming your team. See how each one is designed to solve a very specific problem? And one of the absolute biggest wins here is that you get consistent year-round support. This isn't just a Band-Aid for busy season. We're talking about a blended team model that can support your operations, around the clock. This helps prevent burnout for your key people and makes it so much easier to scale your capacity up or down whenever you need to. All right, so I know what you might be thinking. This sounds good in theory, but how does it actually work? The whole idea of outsourcing can feel a little intimidating, so let's pull back the curtain and look at a really practical way to get started.
The most important thing to remember is you don't have to boil the ocean. You don't do it all at once. A smart rollout happens in phases. Maybe start small. Outsource tax documentation just to get some breathing room during busy season. Once that's working, maybe you bring in reconciliation for a few of your more complex clients. Then you can integrate offshore team members for your regular accounting work. And finally, you can expand into things like tax planning. It's a step-by-step process that won't totally disrupt your firm.
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The number one myth about outsourcing is that you're going to lose control. But honestly, the reality is the complete opposite. When you outsource those time-consuming, execution-heavy tasks, you're forced to standardize your processes. And guess what? That gives you more control, more visibility. It pulls your senior staff out of the day-to-day grind and frees them up to focus on what really matters: high-level strategy, and building great client relationships.
So here's the best way to think about it. Strategic outsourcing is simply using specialized external teams to do the heavy lifting. That's it. This lets you lock in your processes, slash errors, and, this is the big one, it lets your team focus on the high-value advisory work that really moves the needle for your firm.
Let's just quickly run through a few other common questions people have. Security? Yep, that's a big one. It's all protected by really strong confidentiality agreements and secure systems. What about adaptability? Offshore pros get trained specifically on your firm's tools and processes. Is this just for busy season? Nope, this is about creating consistency all year long. And what about results? Most firms start seeing a real improvement in efficiency within just the first couple of months.
Okay, let's wrap this all up. What this really comes down to is getting on a path to predictability. It's about taking that growth, which right now might feel chaotic and a little scary, and turning it into your firm's greatest strength, a truly sustainable asset.
When you get this right, you completely change the game. Staffing stops being this constant headache and becomes a strategic asset. You're no longer just reacting to fires, you're proactively building a system that's ready for anything.
And I'll leave you with this. When your back office is actually built to handle growth, the whole vibe changes. Growth stops feeling like this uncertain, stressful thing, and it starts feeling, well, exciting again. It feels manageable. It feels sustainable. So the real question you have to ask yourself is your firm's foundation ready for what's next?